On Tuesday, the defense and the prosecution will make their closing arguments. Then on Wednesday, Judge Juan Merchan will give the 12 members of the jury, a jury of Trump's peers, instructions on how to apply the law to the facts before them during their deliberations. To win a conviction or an acquittal on any of the 34 counts, there must be a unanimous verdict from the jury. But all it takes is one juror with reasonable doubt of a charge to hang the jury and lead to a mistrial of that charge. Who knows how long the jury will deliberate? All we do know is this: Donald Trump could become the first former American president to be convicted of a criminal offense. Joining us now, Catherine Christian, former assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office and MSNBC legal analyst, and Ankush Khardori, former federal prosecutor for the DOJ and senior writer at Politico magazine. Ankush, Catherine, welcome back to the Sunday Show. Ankush, starting with you, Tuesday is the last chance for each side to make its case to the jury. In your latest article, you wrote, and I'm quoting, "In order to establish Trump's guilt on the felony charges that have been brought, prosecutors have to persuade all 12 of the jurors beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump falsified those records with the intent to conceal another crime, such as breaking election laws. In the end, the case could rise or fall on that ostensibly narrow but essential and still hotly contested factual question." Mr. Former Prosecutor, do you think the prosecution proved the answer to that narrow question?
You know, the real question is what the jurors will make of it. No, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but truly, I think if I were on the jury, I would have serious reservations about the state's case, particularly in as much as it relies necessarily, partly on Michael Cohen, who is a sort of someone who has a past lying for himself and for others, and also plausibly lied on the stand. But, I would say headed into this, I think the state has provided jurors, and I expect they will provide jurors with a couple of paths to a conviction, including based on Cohen and potentially circumstantial evidence. I would still say, their odds are probably more likely than not that they'll secure a conviction, but I do think a hung jury is well within the realm of possibility given the issues with Cohen.
And real quick, on all charges or some charges?
I would think all, just because the way I see this, it's more or less an all or nothing proposition. Right. On the counts structurally, they're the same. Me personally, I would not be parsing each one, but it's conceivable people could split the baby on some of these.
Catherine, it's part of the process as both sides weigh in on jury instructions, and Judge Merchan then decides what those instructions are. One ruling in particular is curious. The one that said that all the jurors don't have to agree on what unlawful means Trump employed, but they do have to agree that he did, in fact, use some kind of unlawful means. How should we be reading that instruction?
That's, if you know anything about conspiracy cases, they're often overt act charged. And the jury just has to find one overt act, even though there could be 55. And you don't poll in New York State court. There is no poll of the jury after, other than juror number one, is that your verdict? So that's not curious to me. And we don't know really what the jury charges are. And I think the judge wisely, I'm sorry, members of the press, did not give him out to the press, because he wants to make sure that this jury, the first time they hear this charge, is on Tuesday. And if they're following their oath, they're not watching us right now. They're not watching TV. I think the reason why it wasn't released to the press is because he wants to make sure that they hear it for the first time on Tuesday after the summations.
I got to get you on one thing, Catherine. Ankush says that he believes that the jury will do, all or nothing. They're not going to split the baby when it comes to these 34 charges. Is there a possibility of a middle ground, do you think? Or do you agree with Ankush? Real quick.
I agree, but I could see jurors saying, well, the checks, there's no way he can get around. He signed all these checks. But the ledger entries and the invoices, maybe he didn't know anything about that. That's the only thing I could see, that he's found guilty in every single check, and the others here not. But I do sort of agree, really agree, not sort of, with that it would be, if it's guilty, it's going to be on all 34 counts. I would be shocked if there is an acquittal. I won't be shocked if there's a hung jury.
Oh, okay. You give me something to look forward to. Okay, we've got less than a minute, and this is to both of you. If Trump's found guilty of any of these felony charges, this could include jail time. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. If convicted, should Trump go to jail? Catherine, you go first.
No matter what you feel about Donald Trump, this felony, falsified business records, is not a jail case in New York. There's no prior convictions. It didn't involve looting millions of dollars from a company. So I don't think if he's found guilty that Judge Merchan will give him a prison or jail sentence.
Ankush?
I think Catherine's analysis is spot on. I think the only wild card is that Trump has been so vocal about discrediting the criminal justice system, the judge, attacking the prosecutors, this or that. And part of the sentencing process is ensuring that there's respect for the law and that the sentence promotes respect for the law. I think Trump's commentary will at least give the judge some pause about whether or not there does need to be prison time, maybe a limited form, just to make sure that that conduct does not go unpunished.
Oh, meaning that the judge could say, you know what, because you've been such a bad actor during this trial, I need to put you in jail to send a message.
Under the federal sentencing law, actually, promoting respect for the law is a statutorily required factor that judges have to consider when they craft a sentence. I'm sure Catherine could talk about New York courts more generally, but I'm sure that that's something that'll be on his mind, too.
Okay, well, we'll just have to bring you back once we get a jury verdict to talk about all of this. Catherine Christian, Ankush Kadori, thank you both very much for coming back to the Sunday show. And a reminder for Tuesday, watch MSNBC starting at 10 a.m. Eastern for special coverage.